So it was a very interesting lesson for us in the sense that, there's still a upscale market where things like free delivery and things like value-added service, these things matter, right? And so it shaped many of our decisions to come, but it was definitely one of those stories that will stick with me for a long time. So it's about how we adapt what we have to our future business strategy, and therefore, born out of that is how your tech roadmap is dictated by the needs of customers and business. Grabbing those opportunities and solving problems and adding value becomes super critical for you to be looked at as someone that's highly credible, that people call on when they have a challenge, when they have an opportunity. Right? Again, there's a little bit of hype, right, in terms of AI, yeah? But I think also it's not super clear in terms of where the big impact is going to come from, right?
Hi everyone, this is Phillip An, your host of the CTO Show by TechVibe. Today we're in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia with a special guest, Sumesh from POS Malaysia. Sumesh, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So Sumesh, I saw that you have such an international and diverse career, taking you all the way from India to the US, now in Malaysia. I would love to learn a little bit more about your overall background and kind of what brought you to each of those locations.
Yeah, sure. I think I've lived in many places. Actually, US is not one of them yet. Anyway, I was sort of born, brought up in India, and growing up in India, obviously, it's a very large country and lots of people around. So I had an opportunity to work for a non-profit organization while in university, and the organization was all about leadership development. And post uni, I had an opportunity to go work with them in one of few countries abroad. And I think my final choices were between Brazil and New Zealand, and I picked Brazil simply with a toss of a coin. So ended up going to a country and a culture that couldn't be more opposite India if I tried, for my first international experience, which was very, very interesting. And there it was all about working with large Brazilian corporations and United Nations-based foundations, which was super interesting as an experience. Did that, and that's typically a year's gig. And so did that just over a year, and then ended up moving to Singapore, working for DHL, where I worked for the next sort of 11 years or so. And then I lived in Singapore, and then Germany, back to Singapore, and then Africa. So had a very interesting and diverse experience. Africa is particularly fascinating. I can talk about it for hours. But and then ended up going to work for a family-based business in the Middle East, where I lived in Dubai, and then went to work for Amazon in Europe, where I lived in Luxembourg. And then I moved back to India to work with a couple of startups in India. And then for the last sort of 3.5 years or so, I've been in Malaysia working for POS Malaysia. So that's kind of, my story. And in between all of this, I managed to study in Spain. And so that's sort of my journey across different parts of the world. Always interesting, never a dull day, and lots of stories.
That's incredible. Were there any specific themes that brought you from location to location that were kind of unifying across your entire career, or certain?
I think by and large it's opportunity driven, and I think the one thing we love as a family is love to live in different countries, love to experience different cultures. I think it builds a phenomenal sense of resilience as an individual. Working in so many different countries, cultures, with different people. And I think it just makes you an inherently resilient person, much, much stronger. And it's a great experience for kids as well. So it's the opportunity and the challenge, doing something interesting. Those have always been our drivers, and that's kind of how every move has really happened.
That's awesome. I can tell that in some sense you're also quite maybe risk seeking. You're not so afraid of resettling and moving, and I think that also has kind of manifested in your career as well, right? I recall in India you actually joined a startup, I guess a scale up, right? And then you took over one of these very, very exciting kind of acquisitions that they actually
Yeah.
did. So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so in India, I ended up working for Swiggy, which is one of India's largest food delivery companies, and now they do a lot more than food delivery as well. Originally I was recruited for a role to. They had actually acquired a company called Scootsie, which was based in Mumbai, and so they acquired this company. Essentially, think of it as a food delivery company and a grocery delivery company, but for high net worth individuals. So this was, sort of a boutique service with really nicely dressed riders. Great food from boutique restaurants and bakeries, and really well packaged. Brought to your doorstep with a lot of care and hygiene. So this was one of those very upscale services, and
Wow.
so essentially this was an acquisition that they had made. With an intent to see how they could scale up this business. And so I ran that business as a CEO of Scootsie. And I also, in parallel, had a dual role where I led customer experience for Swiggy, which was also a very big, high mandate role. At Swiggy, we did about 1.5 million deliveries a day, and when I started, I think the size of my team was something like 8,500 people,
Wow.
which included a massive contact center. So it was a big role and a great experience. I still remember we were trying to figure out the psychology of some of our consumers, and I remember when I started with Scootsie, one of the first things I start off in any role is I get down to the floor where it all happens, and I try and understand the business better, right? In the sense that when I start off any role, I'm down on the ground and really understand who are our customers, how do they feel, and so I was out doing deliveries with one of our riders, and so we picked up a loaf of bread, and we had to ride about something like 5 or 6 kilometers in Mumbai. That can be a long time. And so we ended up going to this really brand new condo. And so we took the elevator all the way up to the penthouse here. And so at this point, I was really intrigued. And I really wanted to understand, because this is a penthouse that probably cost millions of dollars. And clearly the people there were very, very well to do, and probably had multiple cars and multiple drivers and so on and so forth. And I was wondering what drove them to order a loaf of bread from Scootsie, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And that's all it was. It really was a loaf of bread. And so ring the bell. The helper comes out, and I ask her, hey, can I speak to someone at home? She's like, she very gives me a quizzical look. Why? I said, I'll just have a couple of questions. So she went and she grabs the I assume the lady, the house, and so this lady, again, very well dressed and very well appointed, comes out, and she's like, hey, how can I help you? And like, I introduce myself. I'm like, hey, I really only have one question. I'm just curious. Clearly you live here and you have access to many things.
Right.
But why would you use Scootsie just to order a loaf of bread? And she smiles and it's almost without even thinking. She says, "Oh, it's really simple. It's free delivery." So it was a very interesting lesson for us in the sense that there's still a upscale market where things like free delivery and things like value added service, these things matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it shaped many of our decisions to come, but it was definitely one of those stories that will stick with me for a long time.
That's amazing. I think that for you, your background is quite unique because you're coming from places like Amazon and Scootsie and Swiggy, and now you're bringing it to Malaysia, right? For POS Malaysia, which is probably one of the oldest companies in Malaysia, right?
Yeah.
So I would love to hear a little bit more about maybe your current role, what your mandate is, and how you kind of adapt some of these customer, driven thinking and this kind of user experience thinking into, one of these older, more traditional companies.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, my role at POS Malaysia is super interesting. Firstly, POS Malaysia itself is a super interesting organization. Yeah? We're talking about an organization that's 200 years old.
Wow.
We're talking about an organization that has gone well beyond the traditional realms of a post office. Today we have We own subsidiary companies that deal with aviation and aviation-related services. We have subsidiaries in the logistics and supply chain space. We even own 2 ocean liners, and we're in the sort of money lending business, and we're in the financial services business, insurance business. So it's a highly diversified business that we're in, and obviously delivery is still our bread and butter and a big part of what we do. My role at POS Malaysia is I have a bit of a dual role. So firstly, I run all of our strategy and transformation across the organization, and that basically involves coming up with what our turnaround plan was, and this is something that we did right when we started about almost 4 years ago. And so managing our transformation, our sort of growth story. We've launched 3 new businesses in the last couple of years, including a chain of convenience stores. So we've done a lot when it comes to business strategy and transformation. So that's one big part of my role. The second part of my role is I also run all of our product and tech. And I think this is a particularly advantageous position because quite often I find there's a big gap between org strategy and what the product and tech orgs, are building, want to build, and many times there's a bit of misalignment between where the organization is going and what the roadmap is looking like. And I have a bit of an advantage here in the sense that I have a bird's eye view to our strategy of transformation, where we are going in terms of an organization roadmap, so I can really tightly align that to what we're building and how we're building it and so on. So anyway, that's my role. But essentially, it's been a very interesting journey for us, and it's interesting in the sense that when we started, it was a highly legacy tech setup, and so our journeys involved a ton of transformation, modernization. So when I started, literally everything was on-prem, and many of our databases actually sat on people's laptops, stuff like that. So it's a stage of my life I hope I never have to revisit, but it was a lot of hard work. But we made some incredible progress. We managed to migrate to the cloud. Most of our on-prem migrated to the cloud in sort of less than 10 months. We modernized several of our legacy applications. We built multiple new applications for our customers. We sort of revamped our entire data infrastructure, our database setup, our security, our network strategies is gone through a massive overhaul. So we made a ton of progress in across the spectrum, and it's been a super challenging but also super rewarding journey because you can see the impact of what you do very quickly, and so yeah, it's been super interesting.
This episode is brought to you by TechVibe, your one-stop IT recruitment solution provider. We connect global companies with top tech talent across Southeast Asia. Whether you're looking for permanent hires, short-term contractors, or employer of record, EOR services, we've got you covered, especially in the IT and digital sectors. Thanks for tuning in. And now, enjoy the episode.
That's great. I'm curious, obviously this is going to be an organization that's very old, very traditional, but also quite complex, right? Yeah. So when you think about, digital and tech strategy and also having a very unified tech strategy, like how do you even go about that?
Yeah, I think... that's, I think a lot of what the approach that we took was be dictated by the customer. Yeah. So essentially, one of the first projects that I worked on when I started this role is we actually didn't have any pulse check mechanisms from customers. Yeah. So one of the first things I set up was actually a NPS program across different touch points. And we were actually finally able to get customer feedback and real-time customer feedback. Today on my app, on my phone, I can tell you how many, customer feedback did we receive across our retail organization, across our delivery organization, across people who visited our website. What was their feedback? What was their NPS rating? So we have this real time now, and so therefore that voice of customer has become a really important beacon with which we are guided. Yeah. So once we started getting customer feedback, we then said, okay, it's very clear what customers want us to fix, right? What's broken, the customers want us to fix. So that was the sort of first point to call. The second was obviously where the customers are not happy. It's not necessarily broken, but where customer experience is really lagging. So that was the second sort of point of on our roadmap in terms of. So if you really think about our roadmap, we said, look, what are the absolute and essential infrastructure related stuff that we need to fix, without which we won't exist.
Of course.
Right. And that was the absolute basic hygiene stuff. And that sort of became the foundation and the first priority on the roadmap. The second was, listening to customers, what's broken, what do we need to fix? Then listening to customers, what are they not happy with? Then listening to customers, how do they feel about, our new tools? How do they feel about the revamped, UI, UX? What else do we need to be building? So in a lot of ways, our tech strategy is customer driven.
I see.
Right. And so that makes it very objective in the sense that, it becomes less about, what I think is important or someone else thinks that's important. We're guided by the voice of customer. And look, we still have a way to go, right? Because we're coming off a fairly legacy setup, but we made incredible strides. And today our tech strategy is gone from the first year of a very, very basic hygiene and a lot of tech debt driven roadmap to the next year. It was more about fixing and modernizing infrastructure and applications. This year, as an example, it's more about build for the future. So it's sort of, you can almost see the evolution in terms of the progress that we're making.
Amazing. And when you talk about like building for the future, how do you, I guess, sometimes maybe there's individual companies that maybe the customer feedback is pointing you one way, but for you, where you have purview of the entire organization as a whole, maybe it's taking you the other way. How do you balance, I guess, the needs of the group as a whole versus, maybe the individual idiosyncratic directions that maybe each of the businesses want you to take?
Yeah, I mean, if we looked at future direction and we asked 100 customers, I think we'll at least get 60 to 70 different opinions, right? So when it comes to future direction, we also are really keen that we utilize our existing footprint and our existing infrastructure to build on new businesses. I'll give you an example. So we have about 620 plus post offices around the country, and we sit on about 3.2 million square feet of retail space across the country. So when we looked at, hey, we don't have as many customers compared to 3, 4, 5 years ago who are coming to the post office anymore, but at the same time, we have to maintain that infrastructure. So the question is, what else can we do? Yeah, and out of that, born out of that was, hey, why don't we look at a convenience store option where customers, because we're sort of located quite centrally in different parts of the country, can we add more convenience to the customer by coming up with a convenience store format? And so we started as an experiment of one. In about 16 months, we were able to build 50 of them. And today, as we speak, we have about 51 stores, and next year we're looking at how can we license that out to a much broader concept. So born out of that, and therefore that dictated our tech roadmap in terms of what kind of point of sale solution do we want to build, and what's relevant for the business. So when we look at our future strategy, we look at what do we have today that we can capitalize on, right? And therefore, we kind of also stay aligned to what we've been doing. Another example is we launched an e-commerce fulfillment business, right? And an e-commerce fulfillment business, we use all of our existing space, right? And so we build these micro fulfillment hubs around the country, and customers really appreciate that, because traditional fulfillment companies have these large central warehouses, but as an example, for a sports retailer, we were able to build 8 different micro fulfillment hubs for them across the country. So they were closer to their customers, which increased the speed of delivery, better customer experience, less expensive, etc. So it's about how we adapt what we have to our future business strategy, and therefore, born out of that is how your tech roadmap, is dictated by the needs of customers and business.
I see. And on the tech roadmap part, do you guys usually build all the product in-house, or do you guys also use outsourcing? Or
It's a combination. So our sort of the approach we take is, if the needs are super specific, and if this is going to absolutely drive the entire customer experience, then we'd prefer to build it ourselves, right? Whereas if it's not our core expertise and it's not going to directly impact or it's not going to significantly impact the customer experience, then we buy.
I see.
If it's something that's really important to us, but perhaps can be built by an external organization, then we work with our partners to build that. So it's really a combination of all options possible, depending on what we're building.
I see. I think some people in our audience, maybe they're startup entrepreneurs and they would love to work with big groups and conglomerates like you guys, right? Like, what advice would you have for people who maybe want to sell into these big organizations or work or partner with?
Yeah, I mean, we work with multiple startup organizations, and in fact, one of our core philosophies is we'd love to work and champion local Malaysian startups, right? So my advice would be, firstly, reach out. Right? Never be shy. You never know what a conversation and a coffee could lead to. The second is be very articulate. Be very articulate on what is the problem you're solving for, right? And sometimes it's also okay to say, look, this is my core product, but if you have a need that's somewhat aligned to this, I'm also happy to see how I can build specifically for you and take it from there. So don't put yourself in a sort of shoebox of this is what I do, right?
Yes.
Be open, be flexible, focus more on the customer and what they want, and really build from there on, right? Most especially in the enterprise space, most startups, build with those 1, 2, 3 anchor customers, and that's how their product actually evolves, right? So always happy to be engaged with, and just be articulate, be precise in terms of what you want, as well as what you offer, and how can you add value.
That's great. I want to shift a little bit more towards maybe your own career and what you've done. I think it's quite unique because you have such a diversity of experiences across different countries, but different types of organizations, different leveling, different responsibilities, all of these things, right? Do you have any advice for people who maybe they also aspire to maybe be a senior leader handling the tech and digital elements of a large organization like what you're doing now?
I think before I sound all wise and sage, like, I think it's also important to appreciate that sometimes it's also about right place, right time. Yeah, and sometimes things come your way, and I guess you get a bit lucky, and you capitalize on that opportunity. But I still stay true to one of the best pieces of advice I got very early in my career, where a very senior leader told me, as much as you can early on in your career, especially if you get hard problems or turnaround opportunities, always grab them with both hands and grab them quickly. Because what happens is, typically, once you're able to problem solve, and once you build credibility as a problem solver rather than a sales analyst or a programmer, then people look at you with a different set of eyes. They look at you as someone they can count on when hard problems persist. And so grabbing those opportunities and solving problems and adding value becomes super critical for you to be looked at as someone that's highly credible, that people call on when they have a challenge, when they have an opportunity, right? Early on in my career, I got a couple of opportunities where I was able to work with great bunch of people, but also solve some really hard problems, and that gave me a lot of visibility within the organization with senior leaders to be able to say, hey, why don't we put Sumesh on this? So that I think would be super critical, especially for young people who are early on in their careers.
Taking accountability, right?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. Great. Yeah, and I think it's about that, being super ownership driven, right? And that for me is a personally very important value, and the ability to have that sort of owner's mentality, the ability to if I see it, I own it. That often demands you to go outside of your comfort zone, but often is such a differentiator because it's not common, and so if you're a person who indexes high on the ownership mentality, then you are already differentiating yourself with great execution. Then you will clearly set yourself apart. So that would be sort of my advice. Yeah,
that's great. Switching gears a little bit, obviously AI is the talk of the town right now. Would love to hear a little bit more about maybe how you guys are using AI, how you think about the AI kind of disrupting or enabling what you guys are doing now, and what the future of AI looks like.
Yeah, I think look, this one is interesting, right? I think my view is one of the big challenges I have is both sort of within our organization, but also externally in the market, AI is almost interchangeably used with automation and vice versa. Yeah, I mean, not everything requires AI, and if you think about it from a very sort of simplistic view, anything that requires intelligence and anything that requires a certain level of thought process, reasoning, etc., are all potential candidates for AI, either today or in the future. Yeah, but when it comes to things like process automation, when it comes to things like doing repetitive tasks, etc., those are opportunities for automation. And so when this is used sort of interchangeably, it sort of I think puts a bit of an undue pressure on people who are looking for solutions to say, okay, we got to find something AI, and I think that becomes a little bit harder. I think from a organization perspective, I think there are some clear use cases today that already exist, particularly with generative AI.
What are some of the examples?
Yeah, so as an example, the more obvious ones are chatbots. Right?
Yeah.
I think everyone's doing them. And
customer service, marketing,
customer service.
Yeah.
The second one is marketing, and particularly with leads and the whole conversion funnel from leads to prospects. So I think that's the more obvious one. I think anything to do with documentation and as an example, legal. I think that's sort of starting to get some real traction in terms of how it can possibly significantly cut down on things like contract review and contract drafting and so on and so forth. So I think that's another use case. I think particularly in and I think that this sales is another area where I think especially CRM related customer outreach, proactive sort of monitoring of customer trade patterns, etc. I think that's starting to evolve now. So I think there are some use cases that exist, but I think a lot of the use cases are not super clear yet, especially in terms of what the potential impact could be. Yeah, and again, there's a little bit of hype, right, in terms of AI, yeah? But I think also it's not super clear in terms of where the big impact is going to come from, right? And I think from a programming space, I think apps like Lovable and Cursor and so on, I think they're making some real progress that's potentially going to significantly impact coding and development. So yes. I think I can see something coming really big in that direction. But then again, the application of that and how do you know, as an example, things like, if an organization has, 50 software engineers and if you're using coding tools and coding assist, how do you know how many engineers do you not need anymore?
Yeah.
How do you know, what is the velocity of your throughput before and after? What's the expected velocity? So I think those are things that we still kind of need to figure out, and I think we're making rapid progress on areas like that. But I think those are some things that we need to figure out. And in our case, we're also looking at what are our specific use cases where we can build some learning models that will help us. So as an example, in very, very early stages, but we're using CCTVs in our convenience stores to understand how customers' shopping patterns emerge. So things like if a customer enters the aisle from the left, what is the likelihood to purchase versus when they enter from the right. So stuff like that we're using some intelligence based on what we have and building some learning models to give us output that we think could then influence what we do. From a marketing strategy, from a placement strategy, etc. So lots of interesting stuff, and it's definitely worth investing time and effort now. But the use cases and the impact, I think we're still sort of figuring out.
I see. I guess, how do you guys think about putting these on your product roadmap versus making sure that they're you're confident that, hey, this will actually make bottom line impact, or it's maybe safe or reliable enough? Because you guys are quite a big organization,
Yeah.
You need this reliability and security.
I think it's right now, and this is also true to the ethos that we have, which is we're very experimented focused and very iterative. So we don't ever lock something in and say this is locked, loaded, no changes. So we look at all of these as experiments, and some work, some don't, and it's okay if it doesn't. And obviously the question is what you learn from it, etc. But we're very iterative in the way we do these things. Yes, we have a roadmap, and on those roadmaps we have a few models that we've listed, but that does not mean all of those models are going to become successful. And it doesn't mean all those models are going to add the impact that we think it's going to add. So it's experimenting with it. It's understanding what is the potential impact of it. It's iterating when things are going well, and then doubling down if it does go well. So
got it. I think that's probably the only approach that we can adopt in this really modern, fast-changing ecosystem. I think the last section, we would love to go over some quick rapid-fire questions.
Yeah, sure.
So just say whatever comes to your mind, okay? The first question is, what's your favorite tech tour app that you're using right now?
Oh, right now I have to say it's ChatGPT, right? I know it's going to sound a bit cliche, but I use it a lot. And one of my favorite things to do on that is, if I'm thinking about a topic, I get ChatGPT to debate with versus itself on the topic, and that way I get some really holistic views on how to go about it. So that's probably my favorite, yeah.
And do you use just ChatGPT or also Claude, Anthropic, DeepSeek, some of these other models, or deep reaning, or
Yeah. Primarily it's ChatGPT and Perplexity, and so. With ChatGPT, I use a ton of deep research and reasoning. So it really helps. And doing deep research, but also able to summarize that is super helpful.
Got it. If you're not doing what you're doing now, what do you think you'd be spending your time on?
You mean if I wasn't working where I am, not
or even in this industry organization?
Oh, I probably want to be a doctor.
Wow. Wow.
Something I realized quite late in life, but I'm really, really, really passionate about. I'm really curious about the human body. I'm very passionate about the impact doctors can have on life. So
that's amazing. Next question is, what do you appreciate the most in life?
Family.
Family.
Deeply, deeply grateful to my wife and kids, and that's something that I think is a big reason why I get to do what I do, and my sort of personal and professional sort of satisfaction.
Awesome. And then the last question is, what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
That's a difficult one. Best piece of advice I've probably ever received is, I think it has to do with, I mean, look, it's going to sound super cliche, but early on, one of my first bosses said, any jackass can come up with an idea. It's the guy who executes who's going to be the guy who's going to win. And I think it helped me a great deal because it conditioned my mind to very, very heavily focus on execution. So
Ideas are cheap.
yeah, and anyone can come up with it, right?
Yeah, for sure. In this age of AI, even AI can come up with it. Yeah, for sure. Well, Sumesh, thank you so much for your time. That was an amazing conversation. For those of the viewers who want to learn more about you, connect with you, or even learn more about POS, like where can they find you?
LinkedIn. So just look me up, connect, and always happy to chat.
Awesome. And we'll put the links in the show notes as well. So
perfect.
Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate you. What you doing here. I think just showcasing the ideas that interesting people have across the region, and really bringing the region, Southeast Asia as a highlight for people to get to know better. I think it's amazing. So well done.
Hopefully we can do that. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.